Some of the issues I think that are on the horizon are things like what do we do when we really know something about the genome? How does genetic testing, how does genetic engineering play into our concept of what a human being is? And because a lot of these technologies and products and services will be business products and services, it's going to be a place where you can't put the ethics to the side. It's going to be right there in the center. So this whole idea of our genetic knowledge, I think, is crucial. A second is around nanotechnology and what happens when we're able to do some of the more science fiction things with nanotechnology, build machines that build themselves, those kinds of things. We haven't thought about that. We're still struggling with the idea of how property works in a world in which you can reduce a lot of property to strings of zeros and ones. You can digitize it and you can make it available. I mean, in our lifetime, certainly our children's lifetime, we can have most of what we know about the world available on our desktops. And then the question of access to that becomes, I think, an interesting question. So there's the genetic technology, there's the information technology, nanotechnology that's there. Underlying those are, I think, an issue of the spread of capitalism, the question of haves and have-nots, and the question of how do we, who are very fortunate to live where we do, raise the level of people that are not as well off as we are. It's an idea that John Rawls called the difference principle. How do you raise the level of the least well off in society? Now, Rawls and others thought that you did this through government. I think one of the things we're finding with this idea of social entrepreneurship, of putting all these things in the center of business, is that capitalism is a very powerful force for doing this. If you think about the work that people like C.K. Prahlad, Stuart Hart are doing, thinking about the bottom of the pyramid, designing products and services for people who are not very well off. If you think about the point-to-point investment networks, I can now dial up on my computer and figure out how to invest in particular people in very remote parts of the world in their business ventures and get returns. So I think this lends an immediacy and an urgency to rethinking capitalism so that business and ethics go together in a way that we haven't seen. What that's going to do to students, I believe, is it will force them to develop a view of how business and ethics are connected much earlier than business school. So how do we think about, in a sense, the only way to say this is sort of remoralize the world, put ethics in the center of institutions like business, so that students, young people, learn to think about ethics in business, ethics in technology, from a very early age as they are developing their ethical views. I think this is no one knows very much about how to do this, and I think this is a really important issue that we're going to see in the future. There'll still be the kind of standard corporate responsibility issues. One of them is going to be, how far do you take responsibility chain? Most people call it the value chain. We ought to call it the responsibility chain. If you go from end user of a product all the way to when the stuff comes out of the ground or the air or somebody's head, who do you hold responsible for the effects of that all the way through? And resultingly, what are our ideas about responsibility that are important? Is it only iconic brands that are responsible for child labor? So I think those issues are going to continue to grow and develop, and will give a lot of food for thought.